Hey, what's up, good people? It's Jay Ray, the co host of Q Points, and I wanted to come to you because there are two really important ways that you can support our show. One is by subscribing to it wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. Q Points is pretty much everywhere. The other thing that you can do is you can visit us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on Podchaser, and you can leave us a star rating. Please rate us 5 stars because you know you love Q Points. And on Apple Podcasts and on Podchaser, you can actually leave us a written review. It's not required, but it really does help to spread the word about the show, and it helps people to discover it as they're looking for new podcasts to listen to. We're always appreciative of you supporting Q Points. We thank you so much for all that you've done for us so far, and enjoy the show.
Greetings and welcome back to another episode of Q Points. I am DJ Sir Daniel.
My name is Jay Ray, sometimes known by my government as Johnny Ray Cornegay III. What's happening, people? Sir Daniel, you're in a new spot. Everything's different.
You know, I had to get fresh for y'all, show off my Slow Jams Can Heal Us t-shirt along with my my Q Points and Slow Jams buttons and whatnot. And so I figured because we're discussing records, why not get in front of the records tonight? And just switch it up a little bit, shift the vibes a little bit.
Sir Daniel,
Yes.
how are you feeling about tonight's topic that we're about to get
Listen.
into?
I mean, you got to know. I mean, at this point, for all the people that are watching us live and that are tuned in and that have been following us for a while, know that DJ Sir Daniel is probably the number one Salt-N-Pepa stan before standing was even a thing. I've been riding with those young ladies since I was 10 years old.
Yes.
Since I heard the Showstopper when they were known as Supernature. And they were just two college students at Queens, helping a boyfriend who was a burgeoning producer with his music project, helping him out to record a disc record that would go on to make history and solidify them as the most commercially successful female hip hop rap group ever. There has been none to come behind them since. And I say that again. There has been none to come behind them since that has had the impact that they've had.
Absolutely. So I did not, so I haven't been a fan as long as DJ Sir Daniel, right? Because I came to Salt-N-Pepa by way of Push It. So I remember in 1986, that song impacted like every corner of the globe. And you know what's interesting about that song? That year was interesting because we had Run DMC's Walk This Way, we had Salt-N-Pepa's Push It. It was just like a breakout year, and I remember hearing that song and I'm like, oh my God, these girls are like cool. Who are they? And they had a fly video. They had asymmetrical haircuts and colorful leather jackets. And then, of course, what started to happen is the video started to play, and then I got introduced to songs like Tramp and like all this other stuff. And so I also immediately fell in love with them as soon as I heard the cadence of their voices and the way that they as a duo kind of bounced off of each other. I felt like where some groups that absolutely did the bouncing back and forth, I felt like S&P had just a particular way of doing it that reeled you in.
I would agree. It was no mystery to me as somebody who listened to them intently and was, a student of rap music that became a student of rap music at that time. It was no mystery to me that they were patterned after their Queens cousins, Run DMC. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the, the like you said, the cadence, the delivery, the back and forth delivery that they work very hard on to perfect, because a lot of people can't do that, and that takes a skill, because it really takes a symbiosis between two people to finish each other's sentences like that,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to rhyming.
Yeah.
And so that was, to me, I picked up on all of that. And
Mm-hmm.
they were just fun. They were just cool. Like you said, the jackets, the asymmetrical haircuts, you know, to what really, really got me into them was when and I'll share more about this when we start ranking our
Mm-hmm.
favorite. Well, we'll start ranking Salt-N-Pepa albums, and I'll tell you why. So, matter of fact, I'll save that for when we start talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we should, let's first and foremost acknowledge that this is Women's International History Month.
Uh-huh.
And as you know, as a music show, always talking about music history, we want to give flowers to the people that are sometimes unsung. And I think as awarded as Salt-N-Pepa are, they're still kind of footnotes
Yes.
in the history of hip hop, and with our dog and pony show, our cool show, Q Points, we're putting them on a higher level,
Mm-hmm.
because we know what they've accomplished and what they've done over the years. So, and we've been talking about Salt-N-Pepa for a while too, more so along the lines of discussing Herbie Lovebug, who
Mm-hmm.
was at one point their longtime producer, and kind of the man behind the magic,
Yeah.
of Salt-N-Pepa, and all the things that we discussed, and how from the very beginning, like I said, from that project that he did for the music class that ended up as the answer to Dougie Fresh's
Mm-hmm.
The Showstopper, to up until Black's Magic, where he
Mm-hmm.
kind of stood back and kind of let the ladies do it. But before we go any further, J Ray, I want to say that I want to give it up for us, because here we are. I don't know if you guys have seen it, and I hope you did see it. We have put up the origin story of Q Points on our website, and Salt-N-Pepa is the reason for Q
Absolutely.
Points.
Yes.
Salt-N-Pepa is the reason for Q Points.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So in 2021, so this is in the height of the pandemic, of course, Lifetime releases the Salt-N-Pepa biopic. And I had to talk to DJ Sir Daniel about the biopic. Now here's the thing. Sir Daniel, I think you know this. I ain't seen the whole biopic. I've seen like pieces of the biopic.
Oh,
I didn't
really?
I didn't watch the whole thing, but for good reason, right?
True.
So, but ended up talking to DJ Sir Daniel about this, and it ended up we tunneled down this rabbit hole of like, and I remember you specifically saying, Sir Daniel, these women are going to mess up their legacy. And then we were like, we should talk about this on a platform. And that conversation became Q Points.
Absolutely right. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the legend of Q Points.
Yep.
And we have Cheryl, Sandy, and Dee Dee to thank for it. So, without further ado, we're here to rank these albums, right, J Ray?
Mm-hmm.
So, you want to just go ahead and start it off?
Do we want to rank? Yes, let's rank these albums. We are going to jump into. First of all, we haven't been here in a while, Sir Daniel.
To the chalkboard.
We're at the chalkboard, folks. It has been a long time since we have been here. And I think we are going, okay, caveat, by the way, when we do this. I don't know. We don't know what each other's going to say.
Nope.
Like, I have no idea what DJ Sir Daniel's ranking is, and he does not know what my ranking is. I want y'all to definitely, we've been putting it in the chat for those of you that are joining us live. Please go and drop your ranking. But Sir Daniel, I guess we can start with Number 5. So please tell me what your number 5 is, and then I'll tell you what my number 5 is, and then we can talk about it.
Okay. So I will first start off by saying the way that I ranked my albums, the albums, were based on on some criteria. My number 1 pick is based on cultural impact.
Mm-hmm.
My number 2 pick is based on sentimental value. My number 3 pick is the nostalgic appeal of the album. And number 4 is going to be their commercial success. And number 5, I didn't put much thought into number 5
Mm-hmm.
because it's my least favorite. It's my least favorite of the albums. I've never actually even purchased it,
Mm-hmm.
and that is Brand New. Brand New was their final studio album that came out in 97. Came out
Mm-hmm.
in 1997. The reason, not funny thing, the reason it's my least favorite album is because of a record store industry innovation called the listening station.
Yes.
I used to, you talking about somebody who was into them since I was 10. So by the time I had got a little spending money, I was buying rap sight unseen. Like if I saw the cover, if it was somebody that I recognized from Video Music Box, Young TV Raps, and I kind of liked them, I would buy it sight unseen, and then I would just listen to it once I got home. But by 1997, record stores had an innovation called listening stations, boys and girls, and you were able, if it was a big release, the record store guaranteed to have a listening station that featured that particular album.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I can't remember which. I don't remember if it was. I can't remember which one. I don't know if it was Tower or HMV, but I went, I listened, and I listened, and I listened, and I legit got sad because I was like, I'm not really connecting with anything here. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I dug Giddy Up and I dug Are You Ready, because they had videos attached to them, and they were, they were kind of bouncy and flashy videos. Hype Williams directed Are You Ready, if I'm not mistaken. But other than that, getting into the rest of it, it just did not stick with me. It was like it was trying too hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Jerry, we got to talk about the fact that this was 1997. Their first album came out in 86. Styles changed. There was a whole new, era of women, because by then we've had hardcore and we've had
Mm-hmm.
Il Nana.
Yeah.
And I, of course, I'm fans of both of those young ladies and their work. And here's Salt-N-Pepa, where they're trying to keep up and catch up with the times, but stay true to themselves, but still try to contend and hold their spot as the female rap group, premier female rap group. Because again, even up until that point, there are no other female rap groups in contention for that title.
No.
It is literally Salt-N-Pepa's game to lose.
Absolutely. Completely agree. I cannot wait to I hear everything that you said. I'm going to save my commentary on Brand New for where my ranking
Okay.
is. But my number 5 is actually Assault with a Deadly Pepper. That's
Wow.
okay. I need to explain my rankings now.
Okay.
So, as people are going to be like, what? So, here's what I did. I actually went back and listened to the Salt-N-Pepa records. Right? I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
haven't heard these records in a long time. Brand New is a record that in 1997 I absolutely hated. I have a whole other thought that we'll get to when I rank the record. So I went back, is what I'm saying, is I went back and I listened to the records and I listened for body of work
Mm-hmm.
as it related to the album. Now, here's the thing about Salt-N-Pepa that makes Salt-N-Pepa incredibly special. even on the records, even though Assault with a Deadly Pepper is ranked my number 5, there's 3 bangers on this record that are in my top 5, my top 10 of like Salt-N-Pepa songs. So it's like no shade to the album. So the reason why actually Assault with a Deadly Pepper for me ended up being number 5 is listening back to it, the record kind of felt like a group that is finding its way. It was kind of a little bit of Hot, Cool, and Vicious with a little bit of the Future, and it felt a mess, but it also, there was more pop stuff on this joint that I remembered. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, they were really throwing the spaghetti against the wall as it comes to getting on the pop charts.
Mhm.
And the Assault with a Deadly Pepper just felt disjointed. Like I even was listening to the first song and I'm like, they don't rap in this joint till like 2 minutes in because it's like a production, it's like a Herbie production song. And I'm like,
Exactly.
this is like not a Salt-N-Pepa album. This is a Herbie Lovebug album with Salt-N-Pepa on it. Is where I ended up landing.
Mhm.
Now, keep in mind, these women only got 5 records, and there's bangers on all 5 of them. But
True.
I ranked Assault with a Deadly Pepper as my 5th Salt-N-Pepa record. I'll go back and pump those singles, but I probably won't listen to this album again.
Gotcha. No, and you know what? I don't disagree with your thinking because, and I'll tell you when I get to that, I'll tell you my thoughts around that album.
Mhm.
But for my number 4,
What's your number 4?
and I have a visual aid, my
Really?
number 4 is Very Necessary.
Oh, interesting.
And so like I said, I ranked my number 4 based on commercial success.
Mhm.
Like these are the things that are important to me as far as Salt-N-Pepa is concerned. So that's how I rank the albums. So commercial success came at number 4. Of course, Very Necessary was propelled by the Shoop single,
Mhm.
which was on the charts God knows how long. And then it was pushed even further by the What a Man single
Yep.
featuring In Vogue. So that was a combo. You know, we're talking about hottest female rap group combined with the hottest R&B group, and this is when all the original members of In Vogue were still together. They were coming off, they were still hot off of their
Funky
the
Divas,
Funky Divas album. So
year prior.
they were scorching at that time. So the two of them together, I mean, out of here. Video of the video accompanying it, all of that. So that led to a lot of attention. It led to a lot of crossover radio, pop radio charts and everything. And then that led the Grammys to take notice of the None of Your Business
Mhm.
single, which personally, I'm not a big fan of None of Your Business. There was something about it that was kind of, I really didn't like that as far as, you know, thinking that was going to be the song that would propel them to get their first Grammy. But in
Mhm.
fact, None of Your Business is the song that they were nominated for and became Grammy award winning hip hop group Salt-N-Pepa for None of Your Business. And you know they could care less how we rank these albums because they're solidified,
Yeah.
they're icons. But you know that's just how I felt about this album. Now there's some parts of this record that feel a little disjointed as well,
Mhm.
but all in all, I was so happy to see them back. And J Ray, did you realize it was like 3 years between Black's Magic and Very Necessary coming out? 3 years.
3 years, and that actually, um, was a long time in hip hop years,
Very long time.
and that is going to come up in when I talk about, very necessary as well. But let me tell you, so
Mhm.
my number 4 is actually Hot, Cool, and Vicious. Now,
Hmm.
right. So I absolutely adore Hop Cool and Vicious. There is so for all of these records, like I said, when I went back and considered body of work. And what's cool about Hot Cool and Vicious is there's so many classics on the album. This is also once again, it felt knowing the history of Herbie Lovebug.
Mhm.
When I listen to Hot, Cool, and Vicious, much like when I listen to Assault with a Deadly Pepper, I'm like, oh, this is like a Herbie Lovebug album with Salt-N-Pepa on it, right?
Mm.
And while I like the body of work better than Assault with a Deadly Pepper, I felt like it was just like a better collection of songs. I don't feel like in listening to it that that their personality had fully formed yet. And
Okay.
so that's why I ended up ranking this here, because when I went back and I listened to it, I'm like, I love this.
Mhm.
I like these songs. I don't love this like whole as a whole better than Assault with a Deadly Pepper. Still not in my top 3 of Salt-N-Pepa albums, which is really interesting. So, Sir Daniel, what is your number 3?
Well, since you dogged it out, now I'm just playing.
No.
My number 3 is Assault with a
Oh.
Deadly Pepper. Now, so I ranked this number 3 because of nostalgic value to
Mhm.
me. This
Yes.
album came out in '88, and we had a whole, if you go back and listen, we had a whole series about 1988
Yep.
as far as a turn, just a year of greatness for hip hop.
Mhm.
1988, a lot of groundbreaking albums came out in '88. This album, or yes, this album, I believe, took Salt and Pepper to the Grammys as well,
Mhm.
and led them to be a part of the boycott because the Grammys weren't televised.
Mhm.
So that was that. But as I was saying, '88 was a special year for me. I turned 13 in '88.
It's a big
So
deal.
that's a big deal. I was a teenager, although a preteen, but it's still a teenager. And this was the very first album that I bought with my own money,
Love
and
that.
it meant a lot. And so, and another thing, so the videos meant everything. The videos were everything to me because they had Shake Your Thing, and they had Get Up Everybody. If, and since we're all on this topic of TikTok, if you think about it, Get Up Everybody is the very first TikTok video because Salt and Pepper do the very first costume
Right.
change with the hand in the camera. So
Mhm.
they were innovating on this album. This album contains Shake Your Thing, Get Up Everybody, and what's another one that the two solo joints on it.
I
So
love Salt solo joint on this record. What is
so
it?
I love,
Oh shit.
it's
Can't
Let's
remember
Get
the
Paid. Let's
Let's
Get
Get
Paid.
Paid. God.
Solo Power, Let's Get Paid.
Yes.
And of course, Pepper had Syncopated Soul.
Yep. Mhm.
Now what also makes this special is that on the side notes you see that it says featuring Spinderella,
Mhm.
who at this point is Dee Dee Roper, and who also had her very own song about her on this album, Spinderella's Not a Fella.
Yep. Yep.
So there were so many groundbreaking things about this album, the videos. I took into consideration all of that as to why I ranked this as my number 3 Salt and Pepper pick. It meant a lot to me.
Mhm.
I remember as I started, actually, you were with me when I restarted buying vinyl
Mhm.
because my good sisters, Peppermint Gaddy and Lady Marauder were doing a pop-up vinyl over at Scratch Academy in Atlanta. And this was the record that I bought off of
Dope.
Lisa, Assault with a Deadly Pepper. It meant a lot to me. It really does. So for this, for nostalgic reasons,
Mhm.
Assault with a Deadly Pepper is my number 3.
I love it. So My number 3, which surprised me, is actually brand new. Um,
Hmm.
so I did not remember brand new. Like I because I think this is the time where we have to talk about this period in time. So between Very Necessary and Brand New was 4 years. Now, in that 4 years, Salt-N-Pepa did some miraculous things because they weren't just like off. They were, performing on Lilith Fair and like all of these big
Right.
tours.
Right.
They were they released their women's empowerment song. There ain't nothing but a she thing, right? That became a whole moment. They released, now we're heading, because that was 95, and then by 96 we're in the Jiggy era. Bad Boy is in full effect. Jay-Z is hitting the scene, and so everybody is doing that. So Champagne comes, right, which is very much in that party vein that everybody's doing. But now keep in mind, they don't have a project. And back then, kids, it wasn't like now, where you could drop singles, but your singles were meant to lead to a project. Whereas now you could drop a single and keep dropping singles and don't have to have a project. So by the time Brand New arrives in 97, to your earlier point, the landscape of hip hop, particularly for women, has completely changed because now Kim and Fox are on the scene.
That's right.
And so when Brand New hit, it sounded behind the times at that moment. But here's the thing, when I went back and I listened to it, Brand New sounds perfect today. And I'm like, oh, I was listening with my 20-year-old ears in
Mhm.
1997. This wasn't hitting to me because we had this other stuff going on. Now, here's the interesting. So the interesting thing is, I feel like if Brand New had hit like a year earlier before Hardcore and Il Nana hit, it actually would have had a shot. But I think 95 would have been the real sweet spot because we were still in the R&B singing over rap moments at that point. It wasn't that far removed from Very Necessary. But I think when I went back and I listened to Brand New, I felt good. I was like, this record feels warm to me. It feels empowering. You could tell, or I could tell, that Salt really did put a lot of care into it. And you know what also this highlighted for me, and it reflects in my top 2, is what Salt did was she basically took what Herbie was doing and made it like from a woman's perspective.
Facts.
And that's the thing that really comes through with Brand New is I'm like, there's a sprinkling on this record that in 2024 I really like. So I say justice for Brand New. I think folks should go back and revisit the record. And I really do. I feel like if the label that they were on could have figured
Mhm.
hadn't have gone bankrupt before the record came out, they could have figured this one out. There's a lot of songs on here. You know where this would be great? If there is a kickback hip hop joint where Dred Scott is playing and Diggable Planets are playing, you can put in a song from Brand New. It would
Okay.
slip right in with no problem.
Gotcha.
Um,
So
so
it's like a pot of spaghetti. It's even better the next day.
it's it's like a pot of spaghetti because the seasoning, as my mom say, the seasoning go through
Settled. It's settled.
it.
Okay. You know what? I respect that. I really do because I agree with you on especially your analysis of Salt, Cheryl James, and what she did.
Mhm.
So, but we're headed to number 2, right?
Yep. What's your number
So,
2?
number 2
Boom.
is Hot, Cool, and Vicious
Yes.
for me. Now, number 2 is I said was my sentimental favorite. Sentimental because this was my foray into hip hop. This was my gateway drug into hip hop. This was the cassette that I borrowed from Leona Fred and kept for weeks, even though she threatened to tell on me if I didn't give it back to her. I had this for weeks. I would read the liner notes backwards and forwards. Um, and what I didn't realize about this is that until much later when I was older, I realized that there are two versions of this album.
Mhm.
One that does not contain Push It, because this album was released December 5th, 1986. I think around there, December 5th, 1986 was released,
December
but did
8th, 1986. I'm just looking it up.
8th.
You right there.
Okay, I'm right there. So, but did not contain Push It because they didn't go back and do Push It yet. Um, what else? This album represents that back and forth style that we were talking about earlier with Run DMC.
Mhm.
It's like they saw the template, the Run DMC template, but they made it theirs. They were clearly young ladies. They were clearly having a lot more fun. They clearly had a fashion point of view, even though it was considered very around the way girl fashions and nobody, that was attainable. So I think that's what made them very hands-on favorites in very early in their career. And also, this contains My Mic Sounds Nice, which if you ask men and women of a
Mhm.
certain age to list like their top hip hop songs, My Mic Sounds Nice is like groundbreaking in and of itself because it
Yes.
incorporates go-go
Mhm.
and that call and response, that back and forth is just it's funky, it's laid back, but it's still hard hitting. That kick will never go out of style. You could drop this now and people will still get down to it. But yes, so everybody knows that Push It came along because once they released the Tramp single, the video for Tramp, they had to have a B-side for it. So they went in and put Push It on the back of it. A DJ out in LA flipped the record over, played
Mhm.
it. History.
Yep.
This thing, like J Ray said earlier, Push It took off. Push It took them to places. Push It took them to Europe,
Mhm.
took them to South Africa, to perform. Well, it took them to stages to perform for Live Aid, I should say, which
Yeah.
was about Nelson Mandela. So
Mhm.
it took them at the very beginning of their career to some very big stages, some very big platforms.
Mhm.
So that's why this album is undeniable and ranks so high in my preferences of Salt-N-Pepa albums.
Yep. Listen, Hot, Cool, and Vicious is a classic. Um, my number 2, which was almost my number 1,
Mm,
is Black's Magic. Um, you wanna talk about a group who found their groove? Now, this is
absolutely.
where I was like, it was interesting. Like I said, when I went back and I listened to those records, I was like, oh, they was like, oh, we in our pocket now.
Mhm.
Well, because one, we had 4 years of them making records together, right? Salt was like, I can do something. And not only did she do something, she gave them their first number 1, right?
That's
With
right.
Expression. Um and that song, that you want to talk about a great first single? It was out the box. They was fashion forward. Remember, they was wearing the all black with the wigs. Salt had the big
The top
top
hat,
hat.
you know.
And so this record, culturally for me,
Mm,
holds such a special place in my heart because This is, 1990, but this record is one of those records that went for a couple of years. So Peppa got pregnant. They had to take a break, but it didn't stop nothing because though they came back on a second leg of promotion for this album, and the single still hit. So, saying all this to say, from a sentimental standpoint and just the New Jack Swing production, the incorporation of the R&B elements, which Brand New really was like, oh, the culmination of Black's Magic, very necessary. I think, of course, starting with Assault with the Deadly Pepper, but I think Brand New ended up being the culmination of what Salt learned about incorporating the R&B sensibilities that really sits well in Black's Magic. And you got an HIV anthem when they rewrote Let's Talk About Sex. So they're leaning into their empowerment bag. And you got a house classic with Do You Really Want Me? Which I'm going to tell you, when you know a classic, when you can't hear the song without doing the video. Remember the head?
The choreography, yep.
And then they jump. Listen. And I'm like, you can't. That matters. So my number 2, which I might as well go ahead and do it because I know what your number 1 is now. I feel like you're going to continue this conversation.
I mean, you said everything that I was going to say about Black's Magic, because Black's Magic is my number 1. First of all, if you think back on hip hop records that came out between 89 and 90, there's not a whole lot of them that have hand-drawn arts, cover art. This is hand-painted cover art. I'm not sure who the artist was, but if you look closely on the cover, Salt-N-Pepa and Spinderella have a big magic book that's opened up, and from the magic book are spirits of greats like Billie Holiday, Louis Armstrong, Jimi Hendrix, anybody who could think of. So they are in fact paying homage. They realize at that point they're paying homage to the people that came before them, and were paying homage to Black music history, which is what we do here on Key Points.
Right.
And again, to what to your point earlier, J. Ray, Salt had to step up. You know, the record label Next Plateau was like, all right, what's next? And you know, Herbie is doing his thing, a lot of personal stuff as well. And Salt is like, you know what? I'm invested in this, and I've got something to prove. She has something to prove to him as well. So this became a personal vendetta for her. And so that's why you're absolutely right. This album has her DNA all in it. It also has the DNA of Spinderella in it, because to your point, because Peppa was pregnant, the first one to get pregnant out of the group, she was unable to make some of the studio time. So who had to pinch hit? But Spinderella, and Spinderella at her age killed it. She was on, especially the title track, Black's Magic. She sets it off. She kicks the first rhyme. And she did it with such conviction. And the title track to the album is an ode to Blackness. And a lot of, that was new for, I guess people weren't expecting Salt-N-Pepa to speak up on Blackness at such an early time. But you're correct in incorporating R&B. The New Jack Swing expression was out of there. I mean, the kids, we were eating expression up and when I was a freshman in high school. And what else was going on this album? Okay, so you had mentioned that this album had legs, and I think that's an understatement. To J. Ray's point, this album really came out in 89.
Exactly, because Expression was 89.
Expression came out in 89. The album followed shortly. So then you had Expression, and then Peppa had her baby. Then they showed up with Independent, and that was supported by Sybil, who is a fantastic. And And Sybil's one of them artists that don't get her credit. But anyway,
Yeah.
so Sybil assists on that record, and that record gives them some more legs, takes them to Club MTV,
Mm-hmm.
those MTV appearances, BET, they perform it, here and there. And then I think around the summertime, Do You Want Me drops.
Mm-hmm.
We're well into 1990 by now.
Yep.
Do You Want Me drops. And then I'm going to fast forward. One of the things that they did on this album, this was one of the first albums that innovated the remix.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say you had producers like Marley Marl doing remixes, like we saw how it worked for LL, a Marley Marl
Mm-hmm.
remix would take LL's records to another level. That's what they did on this album,
Yep.
because they would take a lot of these records like You Showed Me,
Mm-hmm.
do like a street version, and then flip it into a club version. And that extended the lifespan of this album even more.
Yep.
And of course, like you said, the Let's Talk About Sex record is historic, became an HIV anthem, to
Mm-hmm.
your point earlier, which extended them and took them even further and put them in the faces of a lot more people. So these women put in a lot of work. I mean, only 5 albums, but 5 albums in hip hop terms, that's a lot. That is a lot of work. A
It
lot of
is.
work to stand on, and they deserve every bit of the accolades that they receive.
I absolutely agree. And another thing, I remember um an interview where, because this is the late 80s, early 90s, where it was just a different time. And I remember Salt having to clarify the record is called Black's Magic with an apostrophe, because
Mhm.
they're talking about the power of Black people. Like she said it to make sure that the people, because what they put people wanted to do is like, is this voodoo? Is this, what are we
Mhm.
talking about here? Um, and she was like, let me be very clear about, you read the spelling of the album. We are talking
That's right.
about our magic as Black
Black people.
people. And I remember being like, yeah, that part. So Black's Magic all day was almost my number one. And then I went back and I listened to Very Necessary and I was like, oh, that's my number one. So Very Necessary is where all, I think, the things that we have uh talked about combine
Mhm.
to make for um a project that was rightfully a hit. So obviously Very Necessary is Salt-N-Pepa's biggest commercial success.
For
Um
sure.
Never hit number one. They actually, interestingly enough, never had a number one single. They always had top tens. Everything was like a top 10. But for women in hip hop at that time, this is no, no, no. You don't get any higher.
This is the top of the
And
mountain.
it's top of the mountain. And I would like to, for a split second, paint the picture of 1993, because I think having this context is also really hard, really interesting, given when Very Necessary hits. So I went and I looked, Sir Dan, I had to look. And I was like, okay, so who released records commercially? There was a lot of rap records, but I went to the Wikipedia and was like, who dropped hip hop records in 1993? And then I'm like, okay, who are the women on the list though? So here's who I found. Moni Love, her second album, In a Word or Two, came out early in the year, right?
Right. Mhm.
Um, this was the year of the pivot. We've talked about this many times, where the women in hip hop put on their baggy clothes, they
That's
put
right.
on their dark sunglasses and was like, we hard again, because we was like girly girls on our last albums. This year we back being hard. Get
Being
into
tough.
it. Right. So Yo-Yo and Light dropped on the same day, but of course they're all under the same, I think they were under the same umbrella. Like that was like the Atlantic umbrella.
Atlantic, Rhea, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So MC Light dropped Ain't No Other, Yo-Yo dropped You Better Ask
That's
Somebody on the
somebody.
same day, right? So this is now like summer.
Yes.
Um
And Roughneck wasn't nothing to play with. Roughneck, I think, might have been MC Light's first gold
yeah,
record.
right.
Yeah.
So Roughneck becomes MC Light's biggest album, I'm sorry, biggest single. And but there's like a thing brewing. So there was a lot of ways that Salt-N-Pepa could have went, right? By the time their album comes out, by the time Shoop comes out, we won Salt again, right? Tapping into this the nice nasty, the sweet and sexy sort of thing. The kind of we gonna show you a little leg and then we gonna pull it
You know,
back
pull it back.
thing. You know what I mean? Show you the leg and then pull it back. Salt figured it out, right? So they drop Shoop, which is to your point, a universal smash. Everybody's into it. And so that song, in terms of chart position, is the 5th highest charting hip hop song that year. You want to know what the number, by the way, this is interesting. One of the biggest songs that hit number 1 in 1993, Sir Daniel, Informer by Snow, with our brother MC Shane.
Informer. Okay.
Right. Saying all this to say, and then of course that's third quarter, and then Queen Latifah hits in the fourth quarter with Black Rain.
Black Rain.
Actually, they're both fourth quarter because Salt-N-Pepa is like October, Queen Latifah is like November. Saying why am I painting this picture? Because when I think about 1993 and what was happening at the time, Salt-N-Pepa broke through with Very Necessary, doing a style of rap that women were not trying to do at that time. Right? There was a lot of things that could have signaled don't do this. And the fact that Herbie, Salt, and team did it anyway and had so many singles from it, because What a Man ends up being one of the biggest songs of 1994.
Right.
Positioned Salt-N-Pepa in a class of their own. They were one of the biggest rap groups ever. So that's why Very Necessary, by the way, ends up being my number 1 record. I think as a body of work, it's kind of all the things combined to make for a really solid project. But Sir Daniel, when I went back and I listened to all of these records, what made me sad is that 4 years later, they would be on their last album.
Yeah.
I never, and I get it, and I don't know if Salt's ever talked about this, but I would imagine Salt was like, you know what? I'm not doing this again. I put a lot of effort, time. I never watched their reality show, so I don't know if they talked about it there. But I would imagine that putting that much hard work into something and having it kind of blow up somewhat outside of your control, because it's like the machine that's there to push your project ain't there no more. Like it's physically not present.
Right. You're absolutely right. Based on the reality show, the Lifetime movie, Salt had taken on a lot of the creative process behind the album, starting with Black's Magic. She definitely was like, took control. And I think she took so much control to the point of exhaustion, according to her. And so when the brand new album didn't do what it was supposed to do and didn't yield what they thought it was going to yield, she was kind of like, you know what, I'm okay with this because I'm tired. I've been carrying, and she felt like she was carrying the group on her back, basically. And was not receiving the kind of support that she would have liked to receive. And so, yeah, the body can only take so much. At that point, they're all three of them are mothers,
Yep.
and you know, um, engaged in. Oh, yeah, and all three of them were engaged in very public relationships
Yes.
that didn't do well
Yep.
publicly.
Mhm.
That had a lot of that crashed and burned publicly, and so they really could have really taken some bad turns. But to talk about something you were speaking on earlier, the fact, like, if we're going to talk about very necessary, what I take away from that album is that you're right. Women have to toe, it's a great lesson about how women have to toe a very thin line,
Mhm.
especially in rap music. Or at that time, they were towing a very thin line of how to appeal to both men
Yep.
and women, and also talk about subjects that everybody talks about. But they had to be very careful about how they approached it, because the world wasn't complete didn't completely change at that time. There was a lot. The world, we didn't have social media, so women were still held at a very different held in a very different esteem. And of course, very necessary is pre-hardcore and Il Nana.
Absolutely.
So they couldn't do so. That's why that's why Shoop is such a cutesy but relatable kind of way to talk about sex,
Mhm.
but not being overt. And I think they should be given credit for that, because they showed that there's a way to talk about sex and to be sexy, but not be vulgar and over the top. Because that's who Salt-N-Pepa were. They were the around the way girls, and they were also, they crossed over so much that they were in various people's homes,
Mhm.
and our parents knew about them. So in order for us to still bring home Salt-N-Pepa in record form, we had to make sure that they had to make sure that they were still presentable and acceptable to everybody in the family, as it were.
Yeah.
And so I think that has to be respected
Yeah.
when it comes to them in their career.
Yeah.
Of course, we know about all the politics and the money that got involved. It was like when that Red Ant contract came through, and everybody was like, "Oh, this payday finally." All we put in the hard work, for
And
years, and for it
Vince.
to kind of just disintegrate is one of those rock and roll stories that is unique, but it's not unique, because a lot of people kind of, money tends to be the thing that kind of brings things to a halt or
Mhm.
highlights a lot of dysfunction within the artist or the group of artists.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to bring in a comment to answer the question from Mark McPherson, who's over on Facebook. Shout out to Mark. Mark wanted to let us know that Charles Lilly is listed as the illustrator for Black's Magic, which makes sense. So, Mark also indicates he's best known for illustrating the cover of the autobiography of Malcolm X. So, I know exactly what that cover looks like. So, that makes perfect sense.
See,
Uh,
this so that means that you could frame this.
you could
It's a piece
literally,
of art.
it's a piece of
Literally, it's
art.
a piece of art.
Literally. So I wanted to bring in our response from the folks
Yes.
about what's your favorite Salt and Pepper album. And folks, we have a tie actually. So our listeners voted for we have a tie at number 1 for Assault with a Deadly Pepper
Huh.
and Very Necessary. So yep. So thank y'all for voting in the poll.
Listen, our Q Points community always comes through. Thank you. Thank you for voting. Thank you for making your voices heard. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Q Points. J Ray, let the people know one more time how they could become a part of this legacy and family that we're building over here.
Absolutely. I want to ask our folks a question. Do y'all like the new format? We put the topic up at the top. We did our thing. Let us know if you like it. Send us a DM. We love getting your DMs. So send us a DM. Let us know what you like, what you love. We are getting ready to launch some new things, so we're testing some stuff right now. But yeah, hit us up. Let us know if you like the new format with the topic being at the top and us doing this kind of towards the end. So how can you get up with Q points? You can get up with Q points by doing exactly what you're doing right now. If you hear our voice, you see our faces, you are doing the right thing. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If it has a notification bell, hit the notification bell so that you can be notified about new episodes of Q points. um Definitely go ahead and share it with your friends. uh Follow up with our newsletter or join our newsletter at magazine.qpoints.com, and you can shop our store. You see that shirt that Sir Daniel has on, Slow Jams Can Heal Us. You can have your very own version of that along with the buttons. We have Slow Jams Can Heal Us buttons and mugs. That was upside down. Mugs and things that you can get. They're
I'm doing Q Points ASMR.
You can get all of that at store.qpoints.com. And just thank y'all so much for continuing to rock with us. We are always innovating and excited to just hang out with y'all and do the things. So thank y'all so much.
All right, that's going to do it for us. J. Ray, what do I always say in this life? You have a choice. You can either pick up the needle or you can let the record play. I'm DJ Sir Daniel.
I am J. Ray, y'all.
And this is Q Points Podcast, dropping the needle on Black music history. We'll see you on the next go round. Peace.
Peace.